Hello, everyone, and thank you for downloading our on-demand session. We'll be discussing Flash conversion to HTML5. Our presenter today, Tom Pizer, is the Director of Learning Technologies for GP's Digital Learning Strategies and Solutions Group. He has over 20 years of experience in the technical digital media field and leads a team of programmers and engineers that build many of our interactive solutions. A key aspect of Tom's responsibilities includes staying abreast of emerging technologies and in tune with the latest development methodologies, standards, and practices. With the discontinuation of Flash, this is why we are here to talk to him today. So Tom, are you ready to get everyone up to speed on how to plan for conversion to HTML5?
I am. Thank you very much. So thank you for joining today. As was said at the top of the meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about Flash conversion to HTML5 and why this is happening and what it means to you. I've got a couple of the topics that we're going to be hitting on. First, what is happening to the Adobe Flash Player plugin, and what does that mean to you and to your content inventory? We're going to take a look at the timeline, when you can expect things to start happening and what you can expect to start to see. We're going to talk about the considerations and impacts, things that you can do right now in looking at your current inventory and what that means as it relates to that timeline of events. We're going to talk about some conversion processes and services. We're going to talk about why GP Strategies is the right organization to help you along this journey. And then we're going to end it with some next steps. What are your call to action and what can you be doing right now? So first, what's happening with the Adobe Flash Player? Well, sometime in about mid-2017, Adobe made the official announcement that they're going to stop supporting the Flash Player plugin by the end of 2020. They didn't give some specific dates, but towards the end of 2020 is what we're looking at. There's a number of reasons for this. Probably the biggest one is that the Flash Player doesn't really support a mobile way of doing business in terms of economy on battery life, in terms of being set up to handle a more modern user interface and swipe-based controls. It's just not set up to support it. Adobe recognizes this, and certainly Apple and Google both recognize this. So that's the why of why this is happening. As far as the timeline, going from the right to the left side of the screen, as I said, in 2020, Flash is going to stop working inside of more modern browsers. So two of the biggest ones, Chrome and Microsoft's Edge, already are preparing for this content not to be working. Moving back a little bit, in 2019, what this means is that Microsoft and Google are going to start by disabling the Flash plugin by default for new versions of those browsers. What that's going to mean is that either a user or a learner is going to have to manually activate the Flash plugin for that bit of content, or your IT teams are going to need to set those browsers to allow for that Flash content. So working back from there, we're looking at 2018. Now is the time to begin looking at your course inventory. Now is the time to be thinking about perhaps a mobile strategy. And also now is the time to be thinking about your content and perhaps moving towards a more digital friendly solution. So now that you know that, unfortunately there is no silver bullet to converting that Flash content. That is, that there's not a single tool out there that will convert your Flash content wholesale from one e-learning format to another. But there are certainly some processes that can be put into place in order to move you in the direction from either wholly Flash or Flash components to an HTML5 or more modern framework. That conversion is not going to look the same for every organization, and many organizations have what we'll say is a mixed bag of content in their inventory. They may have some older legacy courses that were developed in, maybe entirely in Flash, using the Flash development environment. There may be another set of courses that were developed in something like Captivate, originally saved out as Flash first, or maybe Flash only. There may be some storyline, or perhaps some Lectora. Lectora being an HTML development environment, but you may have still incorporated Flash content as activities, or as videos, or as audio inside of that content. There are ways to deal with all of these different content types. The best case scenario is that you've got some content development, storyline or Captivate, you've got that source material, that can be opened up and a workflow process can be developed for determining the best types of activities that are going to convert to HTML5. The best type of content to use, say instead of a FLV file for video, converting that to an MP4. So in the best of circumstances, that's a more automated, quote-unquote, process. In some of the more challenging circumstances, you may have Flash content developed in Flash, and you may not have the original source material for that. In that case, there are processes and there are tools for getting at that content, perhaps being able to copy out some of that text-based content so that you don't have to rekey it or redesign it, and even pulling out some of those media resources and then creating a universal template for HTML5 deployment, and then rebuilding that content. So there's kind of a spectrum of approaches, and the way that we approach it is that not only is there a spectrum of approaches, but you can create separate and parallel workflows. Something else to consider is you may be looking at a mobile strategy. Not all of our clients have a mobile strategy in place. Of course, they want content to be mobile first and mobile ready, but some content makes more sense to be mobile first and consumable on a smartphone versus mobile ready and consumable on a modern browser on a laptop. So a proper mobile strategy with support for very specific devices and browsers is going to be important. And we can certainly help you there. And there should be a content strategy that guides the development and the tools that are used to build and maintain content. And so giving some consideration to more modern digital approaches, such as content curation systems, other enterprise systems that may integrate with your LMS, using cloud-based platforms in some cases. Some of our clients can and cannot use cloud-based platforms, but perhaps using cloud-based platforms in order to build and collaborate on content, or building a series of frameworks in order to handle the different types of content development work streams. So what should you do to minimize the impact? The first thing to do is get an inventory of your Flash library right now in order to understand the scope of what you're looking at. Now, some of our clients have a moderate number of courses inside of their course inventory, maybe 50 courses, and other clients may have 600, 700, 1,000 courses inside of there. Well, being able to look at that course inventory and, number one, determine which of those courses actually have Flash components in them, FLV files, SWF files, FLA files sitting inside of there. And then being able to leverage LMS reports in order to match up which content objects or which learning objects are actually currently being used. Which ones are compliance-based, which ones are onboarding-based, where are some of the more critical aspects of your content inventory, and then merging that report together and using that as a tool in order to investigate. This doesn't have to be an overwhelming process. This can actually be the first good step in getting a handle on things. Identifying courses to refresh content, or convert or retire, and that's of course a part of that analysis. And then ensuring that you've got an optimal conversion plan that's going to look at these in terms of work streams and in terms of priorities. And this is, of course, something that you can be doing right now, that your teams can be doing right now, or that we can support you on. GP Strategies has a 4-step conversion process. The first is, as I was describing on the previous screen, to assess your current state. That is, reviewing that existing portfolio. Not only determining which courses have Flash content in them, but categorizing them as certain content types. Maybe you've got a pool of storyline courses, a pool of Flash only, a pool of Captivate courses that were developed in one way, and maybe another pool that was developed another way. Determine what your browser and device requirements are. So that could be a part of that mobile strategy, or it could just be part of an evaluation strategy. And then confirm, of course, access to any source code for these courses. That's going to be a very important point. Once you've got that inventory of courses, making sure that you use that to evaluate which ones you have source files for and which you don't. The next step is to prioritize those courses based off of immediate needs, immediate deployment needs. Perhaps some of these are compliance-based, perhaps some of these are onboarding-based, and taking that into consideration and building a manageable plan. The next thing to do is to develop a conversion plan. And this conversion plan's got a couple of steps in it. The first step is going to be to take that current browser and device compatibility and determine what types of frameworks or what types of support environments you're going to need. If that's going to require a mobile-first framework, building number one, a development methodology for handling that. They may be a commercial tool, it may be a custom framework, just depending on what your organization is able to work with. You may also consider a mobile-friendly format, that is, standard types of e-learning courses that are deployed through laptop on a web browser. And then you might have a development framework in between. Developing those frameworks, branding those frameworks, and then user acceptance testing and testing on the LMS is going to be the order of actions on that third phase. Then you get into the fourth phase, which is going to be actually going through the conversion process, and that's setting up those work streams. Looking at perhaps some of the low-hanging fruit, as we call it. Maybe some of those existing courses that are going to be going through a revision life cycle anyway. So maybe they fit into another work stream. And then there's going to perhaps be some of your lower priority courses that can take place a little bit later in the year. And building a work stream that's going to support those immediate deployment requirements versus those longer term needs. An example of what something might look like here is we've gone through and we've now converted a number of different course structures for several of our clients and built a number of different types of workflows. But what we're talking about is moving from a more traditional, I guess what we'll call a Learning 2.0 type of structure, where you've got almost a linear approach to back and next. You've got some very structured module setups. The content inside of there is hopefully developed in a modular way, hopefully XML based, but contained within recognizable and extractable areas. But you'll see that there's a number of different reasons why people were using Flash, sometimes to handle audio, sometimes to handle video, and sometimes to handle complex interactions such as drag and drops or maybe branching activities. Then we move, in this case, into a more mobile-first approach, considering a more non-linear way of navigating through those modules. Perhaps setting up an infrastructure that allows you to move across those modules horizontally, but then vertically swiping up and down as you move in. Building new content types that are going to handle the various types of interactions that were previously used by the learner before. And then maybe rethinking some of those activities in a new, modern, and mobile-first approach. This just happens to be one type of example for converting that type of content. Certainly there are others. So GP strategies can meet your needs through a number of different areas. We're not always brought in for every single one of these aspects, but we're able to jump in and support in each of these, and certainly from beginning to end. Naturally, starting from that analysis phase, working with you to complete that inventory and do that evaluation, developing perhaps a mobile development strategy for the entire learning organization, working on those step 3 conversion framework templates. So typically what we find is we develop at least 2 of those templates, sometimes 1, just the client says mobile first only. But every once in a while, or I should say more often, we develop more than 1 template type. 1 for mobile first, perhaps 1 for more workflow-based style mobile readiness. Instructional design support. You may be looking at converting the way that you conduct learning, the way that you approach learning. And in a current innovation-based digital world now, we're looking at different ways to convey content, whether that's through curation systems or whether that's through mobile approaches or even gamification. Media and development services. A lot of these inventory of courses will have simply media-based content inside of them. They may have animations, they may have videos. That media service is there in order to convert those or rebuild those in an HTML5 based format. Quality control and LMS testing. GP Strategies has a very robust quality control environment, user acceptance testing environment, and LMS testing facilities. So we've got all of the right types of devices to evaluate this content in a variety of formats and delivered from a variety of systems. And then maintenance support. Things change on the web. The conversion from Flash to HTML5 is a case in point. GP Strategies is there to support maintenance and support on an ongoing basis, whether that's content updating or modifying templates and development infrastructures in order to adapt to changes in the industry. GP Strategies views innovation as a practice. To that end, we have an innovation kitchen within our organization that is focused on practitioners like myself working together across the global organization to evaluate what's on the horizon, whether it's commercial-based tools or commercial-based approaches or digital learning solutions or specific e-learning solutions. There's a lot going on in the industry, from artificial intelligence to chatbot technologies, a lot of movement in the augmented reality, AR, and virtual reality, VR spaces. There's so many content curation tools coming up, new approaches to LMSs, externally facing and internally facing. So maintaining a team that views innovation as a process and as a practice in order to vet, test, evaluate, and implement these approaches is important, and GP Strategies is on the forefront of these technologies and approaches. Why GP Strategies? Well, we've got the experience, certainly. GP Strategies has been in business for 50-plus years in developing learning and performance-based solutions, end-to-end performance-based solutions. It's not just one aspect of our business, it is our business. And to the Flash conversation, we are already doing this, and we're doing this as a part of that ongoing service to our clients, being good corporate stewards for our clients, getting in there proactively. We have developed for those clients a proven methodology using that 4-step process and using that evaluative approach. We are agile and cost effective. You can bring us in when you need us, or we can work with you on an end-to-end solution. and innovation is what GP Strategies is about. Some next steps are some call to action for you. The first thing that you're going to want to do is, as I was saying earlier, inventory your courses. This doesn't have to be a big and elaborate activity. It will require some digging, especially on looking for the source material part of things. But you can really do yourself a good service by getting some teams focused on that activity. GP Strategies LMS team can work with your LMS team in order to assist in that investigation. Determine your overall strategy and timeline. You know, there's a lot of development that happens, of course, during the average development life cycle in an L&D environment. So some of you may already be building out content or may already have plans to build out content in a new modern structure. And what that means is that some of those legacy courses that aren't necessarily scheduled for redevelopment are the things that are sitting out there. So you may have already allocated budget and time and calendar days in order to handle that initial important inventory, and then getting in and developing a plan for, say, some of that legacy inventory is where this conversion practice comes into play. So some of your content may organically already be developed in a more modern environment and away from Flash. Consider new modalities in that conversion process. What is the best way to meet that modern learner? Is your audience now more externally facing, using their own devices, their own mobile devices, versus internally facing and using laptops and web browsers in order to access that content? Some of that content may be unavoidable to use in a traditional quote-unquote sense, but a lot of our clients are moving to a more externally facing mobile approach. Plan for those mobile needs and ensure that you've got an approach to handle that. And then seek guidance on leading strategies to optimize that learning experience, whether that is transforming that learner journey to a more segmented, chunked, micro-learning approach. You know, look at that modern the modern learner expectations and the reporting expectations of the business. This is a good opportunity to evaluate that and reassess those programs. I'd like to thank you for your time today. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to take them. Please feel free to send me an email at tpizer@gpstrategies.com or reach out to me on my cell phone, 240-888-5643. The GP Strategies marketing team has developed a number of tools to help you get into contact or use tools to evaluate your current infrastructure and questions and answers. Please have a look at the GP Strategies website in order to get to that landing page and learn more. Thank you for your time today.